Be seated. When I was younger than I am now, my mother would task me with what I thought was the worst chore. If ever I received a gift or an invitation to a friend's home or a birthday card in the mail, I knew this task was looming. And no matter how hard I tried to hide from the task at hand, I could not escape her eye. I would emerge from my room in the morning, and next to my breakfast would be a pen and a paper. Thank you notes. I dreaded them, thank you notes. I dreaded them. While I was thankful, they were tedious and boring and difficult to write. What made it worse was that I was convinced that if I wrote those thank you notes, those letters, the receiver would think I wanted to keep up the correspondence. I feared that if I wrote them back, they would write back, and so on and so on. I was convinced that I alone, by charge of my mother, was keeping the United States Postal Service alive. And now I realize what my mother was doing. There is something special about receiving a note in the mail. Something that a passing conversation or a telephone call just can't accomplish. And I think you know what I mean. When we look around or open our postbox or ask if the mail has arrived, we aren't looking for store catalogs or bills. We're hoping for a note, a card, a letter from a loved one. Throughout human history, letters have kept us going. They have provided hope. Whether it was an update from an old friend who has since moved away, or a love letter from a beloved who we are not yet united with, or news, hope from a loved one on the front lines of battle, letters are special. They are unique. St. Paul was charged with a mission to plant churches around the Mediterranean, from the coast of Greece to Rome, from Jerusalem to Syria. And Paul traveled spreading the message of an unknown Jesus Christ and planting Christian communities with nothing but a new image of God and a new image of creation. Christianity at this time was still in its infancy. We were still learning the language, the customs, the stories. The Gospels, those stories of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they were simply taught by word of mouth. They hadn't even been written down yet. There was no structure, no grand buildings, no prayer book, no tradition. Little kept this fragile community bound to one another or tied to other Christian communities around the region. Aside from God, Paul was the common denominator, the one who connected, who held these churches together. And while these fledgling communities might have benefited from having Paul stay with them, his mission was to plant, to nurture, then to move on and start again. So as Paul went from community to community, he stayed in contact with them through letters, offering advice, giving guidance, reminding them of their commitment to God and to one another. So when that letter arrived in Thessaloniki, it was a special occasion. This particular letter that we heard this morning from Sylvia is most likely the first letter to ever arrive to any of the churches Paul worked with. And so it is very likely that this letter, the letter we heard this morning, is the first letter to the Thessalonians, is the oldest piece of writing in the Christian canon. Older than the Gospels, older than any other book in the New Testament. But that's not what made it special. What makes this letter special is who it came from and what it said. When Paul left them, he said he would write them. When he left those early Christians, he reminded them of all they had been through together, how hard he had pushed them day and night to start this new way of being, how he revealed to them a God that took their breath away and inspired them to live lives modeled by the example of Jesus. As Paul left, he looked them in the eye and he said he would write. And finally, that letter had arrived. And the one to first receive it probably exclaimed, "A letter from Paul." So within minutes, I'm sure news began to spread, and the Christians around the region started to gather, crowding into a small room, as the literate one among them took the parchment in hand and began to read, "Grace and peace," Paul says. The reader reads aloud the words of Paul, and the gathered ones hold their breath. Paul compliments them on their works of faith, their labor of love, their steadfast hope. He encourages them. He tells them what they are doing matters, and that the Christian lives they are living matters. He tells them what he has heard about them, of their faith, of their welcome, and they feel loved. I'm sure this was not the last time the letter was read aloud. The letter was tucked away, put into safekeeping, then taken out to be read again and again for times of encouragement and hope. We keep letters. Humans do. Perhaps in a shoebox, in a hall closet, or delicately wrapped in string in your dresser drawer. I know you have them. When a parent or a grandparent dies, we often find letters, treasured and kept, yellowed and worn. And when a 94-year-old woman I came to know when she was nearing her time on earth, when she asked for prayer, she asked for anointing, she also asked that in her waning moments we read aloud letters from her beloved, who had long been gone, who had wrote her as he was stationed overseas at war. Letters have kept the tale of human history going. They have often been the key source for weaving together the story of our existence as a people. The story of King's Chapel, of our founding, of our struggles, of our new beginnings, has been fashioned together and told through letters. If you had the chance to dwell within our archives or thumb through the history books we have, you would find thousands upon thousands of letters. It begins with the letters of the Puritan establishment, those who founded Boston, writing one another with fear and trembling as the mother country, the mother church, sent its first Anglican minister to New England to grow the Church of England. And he came on a boat with that banned prayer book. Letters sent back and forth to officials in England as our first minister tried to plant and grow the mother church, that state church, in hostile soil. Letters to friend and foe alike as this newborn community was trying to find its way amidst great opposition. Letters from the crown. Letters from the church as we ascended to political and religious power in Boston. News of birth and death, of wars and battles, of the coronation of kings and queens and newly sought independence, all told through letters. And when the tide changed, and we fell from influence and prominence in this budding democracy, when it looked like our days were done, a letter to a young 20-something seminarian requesting his leadership brought new life to this place. Yes, King's Chapel, we are a people whose story has been told through letters. And it continues. We receive countless letters, cards, notes, and emails, and your clergy and staff have the humbling opportunity to read them. We receive letters from around the world, letters from clerics and scholars, letters from our partner church in Kolishvar and from our mother church in England, letters from visitors who came to our worship or heard our music or learned our history. We receive letters from those who wish they lived closer and those who doubt we should even exist. Letters from those whose ancestors have been carried by the prayers of this church, baptized and married and buried. Letters from those whom we have touched in ways unthinkable, unimaginable. Then there are letters that we receive, that I have received, that shake me to my core. Letters you might not even know about. Letters and emails I receive nearly every few weeks, one just this week. And they sound a lot like this. Dear Sir, dear Reverend Fiedler, dear Pastor, dear Shawn. The reason I'm writing this letter, this email, is not all that clear. I found your name through the King's Chapel website. I wished I lived closer. I wished so much that a church like this existed near me. I wish so much that a church as beautiful as yours, with venerable music as yours, with a history as fascinating and curious as yours, existed where I live. But most of all, Sir, Reverend Shawn, most of all, I wish a church like yours, a church that gives the freedom and grace to live as God created me to be, existed near me. I struggle, Reverend Fiedler, Shawn, because I am a Christian. At least I think I am. But I am also gay. There have been more nights than not when I wish I could take it away. I wish I could extract this part of me. I wish this identity, this life of mine would die, would fade away. I wish beyond all my being that I could change. I have felt so disordered and so wrong. I thought perhaps I should end this, throw myself away. Perhaps if I did that, my friends would notice, my parents would love me more. Then through some miracle, I found out about King's Chapel. I found out about churches like yours, that with the very grace of God, they have open hearts and minds, opened their doors to those who have felt lost, those who have felt unwelcomed, those who have felt rejected. And it gave me hope to get through just another day. I hope to visit you one day. Grace and peace. And because my mother taught me that no gift, no letter, should ever go unanswered, we respond. On behalf of you, I respond. I tell them that you would want them to know this, that they are loved, that they are of great value and great worth, that they should repeat that to themselves as many times as they can stand it. I tell them to keep up their hope, and that when I feel down and out, when I feel hopeless, when I feel the world is getting darker, I am reminded of you, the people of King's Chapel. You who take on the very identity of God. I am reminded of you who make music that carries us to the very throne of heaven. And you who make sure that not one person leaves without being offered a sweet treat or a cup of coffee. I am reminded of those of you who will not stop fighting until homelessness ends. Of those of you who walk for peace, for hunger, for the dignity of all. I'm reminded of those of you who write letters and take meals and call upon those members and friends of ours who are ill or homebound or having a tough time. Of those of you who take it as their responsibility, their call, their ministry here to approach those fresh faces, those newcomers standing alone after the service. to welcome and to embrace. I am reminded of you, you who walked 22 people strong in the pouring rain at yesterday's Gay Pride Parade. To tell those who were watching that we are a church that welcomes them, that loves them. I tell them about you, King's Chapel. You, the living love letters of God, bringing more grace and peace into this world. I tell them about you because you stand as a beacon of light and hope in a world that needs it. Letters. They are open diaries. They are portals into our pulsing hearts. They tell of our fears, our loves, our passions, our desires. And the letters we receive bound us to those who sent them. And the letters we send bound us to those who receive them, and they pose a great responsibility. Because letters, while they may tell a story, it's not just about what we write, but how we live. And you, King's Chapel, live in such a way, shine in such a way that those from far from this place can notice, can feel it, and are given hope to live just one more day. More letters are coming, and I know you will answer them. 330 years bold. 330 years giving hope. Well done, King's Chapel, well done. Happy birthday. Thanks be to God. Amen.